The opinions expressed on the Simone Edwards Show by our guests are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station, its owners, and/or the Simone Edwards Show and those affiliated with it. In no event will the Simone Edwards Show, this station, its owners, guests, hosts, or affiliates be liable for the information disseminated on the program, including, without limitation, any loss or damage, indirect or otherwise, arising from information presented on the show. We trust you are of legal age and will consult appropriate professionals prior to employing any opinion expressed on the show. Many of the topics discussed are personal in nature, and some people may disagree with the opinions expressed on the show. We are open to your constructive criticism and/or ideas for future radio programs. Please feel free to email us at the Simone Edwards Show at gmail.com. Again, that's the Simone Edwards Show at gmail.com. All right, we are here in studio for another installment of the Simone Edwards Show here on this station. I am so excited to have in studio as my guest Miss Ruthie Q, author of Journey. This is an incredibly personal book. We are going to jump into it. Before we get off into the deep end, though, you know how we like to do here at the show. So, Ruthie, we want to get to know you a little bit. Say hello to our audience.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Awesome. We are so happy to have you here in studio. So, where are you from? Let's start there. Are you a native of San Diego?
I am not. I am originally from Los Angeles.
Really?
Yes. That's where I was born and raised, and then I moved to the Inland Empire as a teenager or right before my teen years. And then I've been in San Diego for about 14 years.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, having made this journey from SoCal, we should say the SoCal-ish area, right? And so you were in LA and you came down here to San Diego and settling in San Diego. We're going to talk about that because you detailed that in your book. So that's a little bit of a journey, and I don't want to get too far ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
When you were younger, what did you see yourself? You know, when you were a kid running around in LA, what were your goals and aspirations? Like, how did you think your life was going to turn out? And
I've always been an entrepreneur. So even with my mother, I was an entrepreneur. So I always sold everything. And I always complained about that then. But now I kind of appreciate it, doing that and being given that, as we call, hustle. So I'm happy about that now. But while I was in school, I really, really wanted to be an attorney. And I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney because I knew I had a big mouth and I knew that I could get some people off and help some people. So I always wanted to be an attorney, but that wasn't the journey that God had for me.
Okay, so now tell us, what are you doing now outside of being an author? You know, you can officially put that title behind your name, author.
Absolutely.
You are published.
Yes. So now what I'm doing is I talk to entrepreneurs. Some entrepreneurs, I help them through their journey. I am a motivating speaker. I am a thought leader. I am working with some companies in Los Angeles on that journey.
Okay.
And I'm trying to get there. I love entrepreneurship, and I think that everyone should be one. Obviously, everyone can't be one because then nobody is one.
Right.
But that is my journey currently. I love entrepreneurs. I want to empower them any way that I can. I actually interview people on my personal podcast, entrepreneurs, so that I can get their businesses out there. And then I ask them things like how they got to where they were, where they came from, and how does someone earn some level of success in that type of business. So I really, really empower people through my podcast with these entrepreneurs so that they have that back end information that you never really get to know or see when you're just starting out.
Oh, that's wonderful. So how can we hear your podcast?
It is posted on my Facebook page, which is Ruthie Q, and that's RUTHIE and just a Q. And I post them on my Facebook page every week, and I'm also on Podbean. So just stay tuned, because I'm actually looking for some more avenues to post the podcasts, because they are extremely valuable to new upcoming entrepreneurs, or even ones that have been in the business for any length of time. So definitely stay tuned for that, because that is some valuable information.
That's excellent. So what sparked the idea to start helping? I mean, I know it wasn't your background because your mom gave you the hustle.
Right.
But well, shout out to Mom. Thanks for the hustle. But what led you, at what point did you say, oh my gosh, I have what entrepreneurs need and I want to help them launch their business, and this is how did you turn that into a business for yourself?
Well, I have been an entrepreneur for a very long time.
Okay.
I never saw myself as really working for someone, even though I have worked at the typical 9 to 5, but my thought process was, okay, I'm going to work here, but I want to gain some type of value that I can use for myself. And so being an entrepreneur since I can remember, I mean, I started doing hair at 16, and I said, I'm going to have a business. And I started selling candy. I started just going to Smart and Final, I remember, and getting boxes of candy and saying, you know what? So I can buy this for $5 and then I can make $50 off of it. So I started doing things like that as a teenager. But then as I got older, I said, okay, what service can I offer? And so I just became an entrepreneur, and then I learned the back end information, as like going to the county recorder's office and getting my business license and insurances. I learned all of those things just by trial and error, because it just intrigued me so much. So I said, you know what? A lot of entrepreneurs, I find that they don't know how to do that stuff.
Right.
A lot of people, they have ideas, but they don't know what to do with those ideas.
Right.
So I said, well, why not me just tell them what to do with those ideas and kind of guide them through getting to where they need to be, because we all want this level of success, but sometimes we just need somebody in our corner to say, you know what, this is how you do it. This is how you get there. So why not Ruthie Q?
That is excellent. I absolutely love that. So in your experience, what is like the top 5 mistakes that budding entrepreneurs make?
I think that the biggest mistake is the fear that they can't do it.
Okay.
I believe that whatever you put your mind to, you can do. And I always tell people when they say, oh, I can't do this. I remember working at a job, and the young lady said, oh, I want to go to school for nursing, I believe it was. And she said, but I can't. My husband this and my kids this. And I said, you know what? You have to really, really think about the power of I am. You have to stop saying I can't and say I can. So I said in one of my podcasts, not my podcast, but I used to do a Periscope all the time. And one time I remember distinctly, I said, the one thing that successful people do that people that don't quite reach that level, they take that T off of their can't.
Right.
They take that T off and they just leave it at I can and I will, I'll do. So I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that people that don't kind of reach that level, that's one of the biggest mistakes of entrepreneurship. The other mistakes is not doing their research.
That's good.
Not doing their research, not forming a circle of people that want to help. I know a lot of times we go into entrepreneurship and we think, okay, this person is going to help me. So my mom's going to be in my corner. My sister's going to be in my corner. My friend's going to be in my corner. But sometimes those people are just meant to be who they are in your life. The person that God ordained them to be, your mom, your friend, your sister, and not a business partner.
That's really good.
It is really knowing what people are placed in your life for. Because I read an article about a young man, and what he said was that when people are successful, they are typically good at one thing. but then they have everybody else do other things that they're good at. And I think as entrepreneurs, I just told somebody yesterday, we try to do everything. We're like, well, I don't want to, I'll learn how to do it along the way. And I was one of those people. I said, well, I know how to do logos, and so I'll do that. I know how to build websites, so I'll do that. I know how to do my advertising, so I'll do that. So I was just a one-man show, but typically a one-man show doesn't reach that level of success that we're trying to get to.
Right.
So it's just very important to have people strategically placed in your business that know what they're doing, and you not saying, I can be a one-man show and I'll just do everything.
I think that's really excellent advice, because sometimes whether it's for financial reasons or out of fear,
right?
The whole idea of being the person you're the one-man band and you're
Right.
playing the drums and the horns and everything. And it's kind of like that shelf life is so small.
Right.
When you have the synergy of different people coming together and they bring their talents to the table and then we all participate.
Absolutely.
It's so much better. I agree with you about, and I'm a firm advocate of, let the expert be the expert. It's good to know it. I think in a general sense, it's good to know what's going on in your business.
Right.
It's good to have the website background so you can say, well, no, that's not what I want. I want this, or it shouldn't go that way. It's good to know how to create a logo because then you can speak intelligently with your designer.
Right.
But you don't have to be the person. So entrepreneurs, are you listening? You don't have to be the person to do it.
To do everything.
You don't have to do everything. And there may be a season, and let's just deal with that. There may be a season when you're starting out in your life where you are doing everything.
Right.
But when God begins to open those doors and he begins to bring people into your life that have the skill set, welcome them in so that, you can go to that level of success that you desire. Right. And definitely reach out to Ruthie Q.
Absolutely.
You can find her on Facebook under Ruthie, Ruthie, Q, as in just the letter Q for Queen. That's
right,
it.
Absolutely.
You can find her there. And so tune into her podcast on entrepreneurship on Podbean. How often? What days?
I do it once a week. I'm going to be growing to twice a week in the next coming weeks. So,
okay.
But I am looking for entrepreneurs to be able to interview. So I go to their location, their date, their time, and I interview them on their success.
That's excellent.
And that way I kind of give them some feedback, talk to them a little bit about it, because I know a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we don't ever get to share those things, and we never actually hear ourselves saying how we got to where we are.
Right.
So I come out and I just do a short interview with them, and then I put it on there so that we can empower each other as entrepreneurs.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love that. So in this busy schedule that you have, and oh, by the way, she's also a wife. So in this busy schedule that you have of being a wife and taking care of the needs of a household and everything that comes with wifedom,
right,
and being an entrepreneur, somewhere along the way you decided to write a book.
Yes.
About your life.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, it was never really something that I said that I'm going to write a book. We all joke and say, "Ooh, I should write a book," but it was never something that I really thought about realistically and said, I want to do this. But the book came about because God was like, that's your assignment. I know a lot of times we get these assignments from God and we're just like, I don't want that one.
Right.
So
I want the pretty one.
Exactly. I want the pretty one. But he said, that's your assignment. And I said, okay. Okay. Yeah. Because he had given me dreams prior to the book.
Right.
And he had been giving me the same dream several different times. And I was like, me? Like, you sure you got the right person? And he kept giving me the same dream, and I actually talk about that in the foreword.
Yes, I remember reading that.
Yes,
yeah.
I talk about that. He kept giving me the same dream, and I said, okay, well, I'm moving forward, God. I know you are you have my hand. You have my back. You gave me the assignment. I'm going to complete it.
So for my authors who are listening, and I'm not going to say would be because you are, it may not be your time right now, but if that seed is there in your heart to write your story, what was that first step like? What was it like when you sat down, that first chapter, that first step, that first, like, I've jumped off the cliff and there's no going back?
That first chapter for me, oh my goodness. I remember after God gave me the assignment, it took me a couple of months, but then I got my computer out and I started just writing. And I remember the very, very first chapter, I wrote it and then I read it and then I just laid back on my bed and I cried because I had never heard myself say these things, and it was almost like it wasn't me in that story. Right. It was somebody else, because it was so long ago. It was somebody else that had lived this, and it wasn't even me at that point. Right. And I just had to cry because I was like, I cannot believe I went through this. Like, right. This was me. So that's where my beginning came from.
And so here's what I found really interesting, that your healing didn't come as you were writing it. Your healing kind of came after you finished that first chapter, and then you went back and you read what you wrote.
See, my healing process, it happened through the entire course, because the healing started for sure after that first chapter. Right. But there were so many things that I still had in me, that so much brokenness that right. I said, okay, God. And from there, I kid you not, I literally wrote almost every day. And typically when it's not something that God has for us, we'll write, but then it's like, we'll get tired of writing, and we don't really want to stay up late writing. We don't want to wake up early writing. But literally after that first chapter, I would get up at like 5, 6 in the morning and just start writing. And wow. I just write for hours. And then I would stay up late writing. And I do not like staying up late at all. I do not. I enjoy my sleep. I like to go to bed around 9 o'clock. Wow. But I would stay up until 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning just writing, and I wouldn't be tired. I would just write, and he was just getting everything out of me. It was kind of like I was just pouring out. God was giving it to me, and I was like, okay, God, I'm pouring this out to you. I'm giving it to you. I'm giving it back to you. So that's how it was, just writing. And that healing was just like, I was pouring out and he was filling me with something else.
It just sounds very cathartic. Just like this emotional release, so that he could prepare you for your next stage in life.
Absolutely.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, you guys, we're going to have to take a break for station identification. We will be back in studio with Ruthie Q, author of Journey, and we're going to be jumping into the chapters a little bit and have her give us some more information about this book that she wrote. So hang tight. We will be back in just a moment.
Do you have any questions, comments, or concerns about today's show? Would you like to share your testimony or any constructive critiques? Would you like to know how to be a guest on The Simone Edwards Show? Please feel free to email us at thesimoneedwardsshow@gmail.com. We are also available on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. Be sure to follow us to receive updates regarding the show and our other ministries.
All right, we are back here in studio with Ruthie Q, author of The Journey, and we are going to be talking, so we're going to open up, we're going to get into the book now, right? Absolutely. The Journey. So in chapter 1, you kind of start out with kind of a bang. And so one of the things that I want to make sure that our readers or our listeners know, one of the things I really liked about the structure of this book, and it actually is a confirmation for me in my own book that is at the end of each area, you know what I mean? You kind of have like a section to, okay, write down your thoughts. So it's not just a book, but it's kind of like a book slash the start of a journal. So what made you, why did you decide to structure your book that way?
For me, it was important because my chapters have so much in them.
Right.
And it gives you so much insight as to what I went through.
Right.
I know that a lot of women, they go through these exact same things, but they don't really want to say that I went through that. So it was important for me this is a personal journey. And it was important for me to put those things in the back of each chapter, because I know sometimes when you're reading, you're like, I want to jot something down, or I went through that same exact thing.
Right.
And you're like, well, but you don't want to just mess up your book.
Right.
Just writing all over your book. But I thought that it was important for you to be able to identify those same characteristic or those same traits in yourself and have somewhere to put them.
Okay, excellent. So now let's start with chapter 1. In chapter 1, you talk about the damage of losing your purity and how you carried that with you for another 20 years. And I'm just going to tell you, there was one part in the book, I can't remember if it's chapter 6 or 7, and you were like, oh yes, and at 20. And I'm like, wait a minute, all of that stuff happened? She's not even 20? I was like, wait, what happened?
Yes.
So, talk to us about what, what led up to it. And one of the things that I really appreciate about what you shared was how vulnerable you were and just kind of some of the mistakes that you made along the way, as far as, listening to that silvery tongue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So talk to us about that.
So for me, in chapter 1, it was important for me to write it that way, because I remember that situation. And for me, it was, my parents had split that same year.
Right.
And
how old were you?
I was 12 years old.
Okay. And
they had split that same year. And I remember meeting someone, and it just, he made it sound good.
Right.
And I remember feeling a certain way. I felt the love. Even though I had just met him, he made me feel like I was important.
Right.
Like he loved me.
Right.
So I remember that, and it just, like I note in the book, that as soon as he said, "Can I hold you?" Normally people don't say things like that. They don't say, "Can I hold you?"
Right.
That's kind of that romantic.
Right. That's like a, genteel, gentleman-ish Elizabethan language.
When he said that to me, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe he can be trusted.
Right.
And it just made me feel a certain way. I kind of, in my mind, I just let go.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay, all right. This is where we are. And I remember, even at that age, I knew I always wanted to be married.
Right.
And I knew I wanted to be married young, because I knew what I had in me. I knew I had the capacity to love someone, just love them like to death, and just like give it all.
Right.
So I just thought then, okay, everyone else is like that too. And then I quickly found out that they're not.
One of the reoccurring themes in your book is you often talk about he made me feel special. And it was something that just kind of stood out to me as I got towards the end of the book, because it was like, chapter 1, he made me feel special. He made me feel important. He made me feel this. He made me feel that. At what point did you learn to kind of not rely on that as a gateway into yourself, not necessarily from a physical intimacy standpoint, but just at what point did that hole started to fill up, so to speak?
So I'll just say this. In the book, it took until about chapter 9, and then I started talking about building me up.
That's good.
Me building me up, and me understanding my value, what I had to bring to the table, and what my worth was.
Right.
So that's when I talked about it in the book. But in my life, I went through that for so many different years, and I got married very, very young. I got married at 19 years old.
Okay.
And even
was
after,
this Joe?
This was Joe.
Okay,
yes.
And we'll get to Joe. You guys will just read the book.
And after I married Joe, we actually divorced. I think we were about 360 days out. So we didn't even make a year. But I still was searching for that thing called love.
Right.
And I honestly, I didn't find it until I let God be God. Mm-hmm. And that was when I got married at 28 years old.
Okay, so I'm going to pause you really quickly because that's a great saying, and it is a true saying, and it is factual. Mm-hmm. But for the sake of my audience, what does that mean? Let God be God. What does that look like?
For me, it was, I know a lot of times as women, what we do is we say, okay, I want somebody that's 6'3". I want somebody that looks like this. And we always have this idea of what we think our husband should look like and how he should be. And it wasn't until I said, you know what? I'm just going to let God is going to show me who he has for me. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened when I met my husband, he was a sweet guy, but I said, he's not the description of what I already said that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And God is going to give me what I want. So he's not the description of what I want. So when I met him, and we met as friends, so I said, I hope he doesn't like me because I don't like him because he was not the description of what God had for me. Right. But at that time, there was a turning point where I let God be God. Mm-hmm. And I really looked at my friend at the time, and we got married super, super quickly after we met. Mm-hmm. But I let God be God, and God was like, that's your husband. Mm. And I remember driving down the street, and I was either on my way to have lunch with him, my friend at the time, or I was leaving him, and God was like, that's your husband. And I was like, okay, he's shorter than I would like. And
okay, so we're gonna pause. We're gonna pause really quick because we're gonna have to go back to chapter 2.
Okay, let's go
because
back.
We need to give this audience some perspective on why you were so reticent.
Okay.
So talk to us about the list of 33 before you go forward into your husband. So talk to us about what's the list of 33.
So when I was just earlier on, I had this black book that I used to carry, and I took it everywhere I went. Mm-hmm. And every time I thought about a characteristic that made me feel a certain way, I would write it down. I was like, oh yeah, I want a husband, or I want a man that does this. Mm-hmm. I want him to be caring, and I want him to be dependable, and I want him to love his mother. And I, of course, had those superficial ones. I want him to be over 6'3", and I want him to be a certain weight and a certain build and this, that, and the other. And I remember having 33 things on that list. And there was a point where I said, I'm not dating anyone under 6'3". So even...
What's the fascination with 6'3"?
I loved tall men.
Okay.
So the taller you were, the better. So, but I was fascinated with that. Mm-hmm. And so if someone that was not 6'3" and above, I wouldn't even give him the time of day, because I said, well, that's clearly not who God has for me, because this is what I want. Right. So I have this list of 33 things, and that list, it continued to dwindle away because I would get into a relationship and I would give myself away, and he would make me feel a certain way, and he would make me feel like he had all of those 33 qualities. But then after I gave myself away, soon it turned into something else, and I was like, well, he wasn't that one, and I started checking off the list of 33. I was like, he probably only had about 5 of those things.
And you know what? That's a really good point. I remember reading that. Your exact words were, the characteristics I gave to him. Talk to us as women about sometimes the characteristics that we can give to somebody that they don't really have, and how to look out for that and how to kind of stop that cycle.
I think that what we do as women, we want to see things, even though when we see those red flags, we want to see things that are not there. And
why do you think we do that?
I believe that I honestly, I think it's just every woman wants to be loved a certain way.
Right.
And
that's good.
When we have that in us, we want to give that. We want to share that with someone else. So we give it to them, even though they don't give it to us, or even though they don't exude that that characteristic, we give it to them because we have it in us.
Is that the fallacy of, I can love this person into becoming...
Exactly.
Okay.
And we a lot of times women, and we don't want to say, oh, we're trying to change him, but
right.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change him into who we want him to be, or who it's kind of that puppy love thing. You're kind of looking past all those flaws because you're infatuated with maybe how he looks, or sometimes how much money he makes. That's just the bottom line. We give him those things because we see something that we can get. We kind of can get past those things. And I mean, I've spoken to so many people, and some women say, you know what, I would rather marry for security than love, or I would rather marry for looks than love, or
Really? Wow. That is it is definitely a vantage point that is different than one I'm accustomed to. So I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. It's just that's very interesting. So how if someone is thinking that way, what can they do to change their thinking? And were there times that you found yourself in that place where you were with someone because of what they could do for you or how they looked versus who they were? And how did you get out of that?
Now, I think that for other women, what we can do is stop ignoring those red flags.
Okay.
Stop ignoring those.
That's good.
And for me, there was, and I mentioned him in my book, but there was a guy that I was dating, and he kind of made me feel good, but he kind of didn't. He would say different things sometimes, and it was like, I can get past that because he's absolutely drop dead gorgeous. And I was there. He was over 6'3". He had the build that I wanted. No.
Okay.
No. There was if you read my book, there was a guy that I was dating right before I got married. And I had to look back at it because God abruptly took me out of that relationship.
Yes. Okay.
So he abruptly took me out of that relationship, and I couldn't understand why. And it just so happened that, yes, Ruthie was looking past those things that he would do and say, but because he was fine, but God took me out of that relationship. And then 6 months later, 6 months after I stopped dating him,
that was a shocker when I read that.
This man was arrested for murder. And And I just could not believe it.
Right.
And they were trying to peg a female accomplice. And I'm like, okay, God, okay, now I know why you took me out of that abruptly.
Right.
I could have been in prison for the rest of my life for something that I had no clue about.
Or you could have been dead.
I could have been dead.
Right.
And because I didn't know all the nights and the days that I was hanging out with him and going over his house, I didn't know there was guns in the house, and I didn't know all of those things because I didn't choose to know all those things. All I saw was a fine man.
Oh, Ruthie, you just said something really good. You just said something. I love that you said, I chose not to know. I want you to talk to our female audience. And this is, men, we're not trying to exclude you. Brothers, you know we love you. Talk to our female audience about deliberately choosing to be ignorant. Because it's a choice.
Absolutely.
And so talk to us about that and the dangers of that.
I think that, for one, that is extremely dangerous. But, you know, as women, we get into this place where we're just like, I don't want to be alone, or we ignore those red flags and we make a choice to ignore those. You know, I say to people all the time, I tell my children, I tell my husband, I tell people all the time, make great choices.
Right.
Every single thing that we do is a choice. When we choose to ignore those things and we see something that you know it doesn't quite feel right, but you choose to ignore it, you are making a choice to pay with your life, essentially. Because you never know, when you choose to ignore those things, you never know what type of situation you're going to be put in where that comes up and God can say to you, well, I said.
For real, you took the thought right out of my mind, Ruthie, because I'm thinking, if you pray and you ask God to show you the red flags, God, is this person the one for me?
Right.
One of the things he taught me a long time ago, and I've followed this rule throughout my life, I don't ever pray and say, God, I want this person. I pray and I say, God, is this the one for me?
Absolutely.
Show me if this is the one. And when he starts showing those red flags, and sometimes it's not easy to walk away from the red flags, especially if if you get caught up in the wrong things. For me, it's not money. God has blessed me to make my own money, so I don't care if you make, just bring something to the table. That's where my mind is. Make sure you're right. So, but we can get caught up in the wrong things. We can get caught up in looking at the sparkly packaging that a lot of times we miss the red flags.
Right.
And God was like, but I was showing you the temper the whole time. I was showing you the disrespect the whole time. I was showing you the whole time. I was showing you, know, and it's, and I like the fact that you said to be careful of ignoring those, because you really can pay with your life.
Yes, absolutely.
And it may not be death, but it could be the death of your dreams.
Right.
It could be the death of your vision. It could be the death of your destiny. It could be the death of your ministry.
Absolutely.
All because, you were caught up in looking at the wrong thing.
Right.
So before my audience kills me, because I just feel this get back to her husband. So you went through all of these tumultuous relationships and choosing for the wrong reasons. And so now you're walking away from lunch with your friend.
Yes.
And God says, that's your husband.
Yes.
And you go,
yes.
He's not on listed 33.
and I don't document my marriage in my book, but when I met my husband, we started dating 2 weeks later.
Okay.
And I started dating him on June 3rd of 2006. And 28 days later, July 1st, 2006, we were married.
Wow.
So it was kind of like, God was like, he's the one. It's him. So you can go ahead and you don't have to be waiting years and years and years. And he showed me, and I told my husband when he asked me to court me, he said, "Can I court you?" And I said, "Well, I've never dated a non-black guy." And he said to me, "Well, oh, that's about to change." And I was like, "Well, okay, all right now." And it's funny because then I called his mom. I said, "Does he have black in him?" She was like, "Absolutely." I was like, "Yep, yep, yep." But God showed him to me and told me that he was my husband, and instantly I knew, like, just spending time with him, I said, I have never ever been treated this well in a relationship, but it was outside of this box that I had formed, and I had put these 33 things in.
Right.
It was outside of this box, so I was going to forego my blessing with the person that God had for me because he was outside of this box that Ruthie Q put together. So
wow. All right. So with that, you guys, we're going to take a break for station identification. Hang tight. We'll be back in just a moment. We are going to get into how she got away from battling self-acceptance. We're going to talk some more about how, this journey that she went on in these relationships, how God used all of that bad to help her find the good and to settle her and to bless her. Congratulations, it's 10 years.
Yes.
On the marriage.
Yes, thank you.
So we'll be back in just a moment. Hang tight.
Do you have any questions, comments, or concerns about today's show? Would you like to share your testimony or any constructive critiques? Would you like to know how to be a guest on The Simone Edwards Show? Please feel free to email us at thesimoneedwardsshow@gmail.com. We are also available on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. Be sure to follow us to receive updates regarding the show and our other ministries.
All right, we are back here in studio with Ruthie Q, author of The Journey. We've had such a great time just talking about life and love and choices and relationship. And that's what The Journey really is. It's a book about a relationships, and kind of mirroring some of, the not so great relationships that are out there, as well as learning to develop a relationship with yourself. I want to pull a quote from chapter 5. And it kind of ties back into what we were talking about previously.
Mm-hmm.
You said Casey didn't make you a priority in the relationship. And so you said, no matter how much I changed myself to conform to the situations that were being thrown at me, he never changed.
Right.
You can't ever change someone else. They have to want that for themselves. What you can change is your perception of yourself. You have the power to decide that you deserve more than what is being offered.
Right.
At what point did you end the battle with self-loathing? Because if I go back to chapter 3, you talk about what you were walking around for a long time with a barrier between your mind and your body. And it was almost like, while you weren't two persons, so it wasn't a bipolar, schizophrenic type of thing, it was just a sense of you being disconnected from the person that you were. So how did that the good that came out of the negative relationship with Casey was realizing, wait a minute, I'm settling for way less than I deserve. When did you start to accept yourself? When did you start to realize I deserve better and I want better for myself?
I think that when I got to that point, I was just, as you can see in the book, halfway through it starts to change. Because of course I'm writing the book from my perspective now versus, and then the stories in the book are from what I was going through then. But I got to the place where I was just like, I know who I am. I know what I bring to the table. I know I'm the bomb. So, but it changed for me when I was able to forgive those people.
Wow.
Actually going through each of those stories, I actually had to do the activity, and I had to say each name and say, I forgive you for what you've done, but I have to be here for me. I am important here. I know my value and I know my worth. So I can no longer accept what's being thrown at me.
Right.
Because before it was, well, okay, I'm just going to accept that. I know who I am in my mind, but if my body is what you want, okay, that's fine, because eventually you'll love me the way that I deserve. I know I deserve to be loved.
Right.
But that never happened.
Right.
Because it was that battle. It was just that back and forth. I knew what I had to offer, but I didn't expect it, or I didn't demand that they gave me what I knew I was worth.
Right.
I never demanded it. So that changed for me. And now I demand. And some people say I'm too demanding, but I know my value and I know my worth.
One of the things that you talk about is putting yourself, you said in chapter 6, I am of the utmost importance. Shed some light on that, because there are two ways that this can go, right? It can go in the sense of, okay, I'm important and I have value and I have worth. And then also from kind of a Christian angle, it's like, okay, help to balance that out, because how can we really say when we belong to God that I'm of the utmost importance when it's really God that should be of the utmost importance? So clear that up for us a little bit.
Okay. So I believe that everyone should feel that they are important. That's what that means.
Okay.
That you have to feel yourself. Someone else can't make you feel important.
That's good.
So you have to know that within yourself. You have to know what you bring to the table.
Right.
And you have to depend on that. And then above all of that, the umbrella is God even giving you the power to do that.
Right.
To know that and to understand that. Because he gives it to us, but it's how we choose to operate in that area, that realm. So that's what that means, that you have to know that you are important. I know a lot of times we get into these relationships and we don't feel important at all. Maybe, I mean, there's no 50-50, or in my book, there's no 100-100. We're not both putting in the same percentage.
So what does a person do if they find themselves, based on your experience, based on what you've learned, based on all that's happened? So now we have Susie Q who's listening, right? And she's kind of like, oh my God, you guys are talking right to me. You have no idea. And I'm in this relationship where I'm just given everything and I'm hoping he'll change, and I'm hoping and he's not changing. What do you say to her?
I say that he is showing you, though he's showing you who he is. He's already doing that. That is the red flag. Pay attention to that red flag, because no matter how much you change you, he's not going to change him. You cannot change him. Only God can do that. So you have to take that to God in prayer. But I would never tell someone, oh, you need to get out of that relationship. I'll put it out there for them that is definitely a red flag. And he's showing you what he will and can bring to the table.
And please understand that this is all premarital advice.
Right.
And, you know, if you're talking about making a major life change, as Ruthie stated, all we can do is just kind of put it out there and say, if you're in a relationship where someone is speaking to you disrespectfully, someone's being abusive or withholding intentionally, they have other things and other people that they've made a priority, and you're somewhere, you know, towards the bottom 200 of that list, you may want to reconsider.
Right.
the choices that you are making.
And another thing that I want to go back to,
Absolutely.
that 33, it became the OBO. So let me explain that. It became the or best offer. So every relationship, I would pull out that book and I would measure him up to those 33 things. And then I remember the next relationship, he only met 25 of those things. And then after that relationship, the next guy only met 15 of those things. So I realized that I was giving them the power over my life, the same power that I had. I was giving that to them. Okay, whatever you want to give to me, whatever you can offer to me, I'll take it. So I gave them that power to make that decision of what was best for me and my life, my journey.
Wow, that is so powerful. So when did you get to the place where you were like, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm done. I'm done with these deadbeat relationships. I'm done with settling for less than I deserve. Not that I think I'm better than anybody else, but I certainly, if I'm giving you filet mignon, don't give me 20-day-old McDonald's hamburger. Right. So at what point did you kind of have this aha moment, this awakening? At what point did God kind of throw the proverbial cold water in your face and you were like, I'm done and I don't want to do this anymore?
That was when I got married. And this is my poor husband. He has to get all the new improved Ruthie Q. And I'm not settling for anything other than the best. My poor husband. But that was when I had that moment where I was just like, I know who I am. And either take it or leave it. And I didn't care what anybody thought about me. I don't care what anybody says about me. I know who I am. And I know what I bring to the table.
So what was that journey like, though? Because for someone who's listening, and I love concepts, but I also love practicality. So when you say, I know who I am, what steps did you take to get to the place of, I'm in a place where I don't care what other people think about me, and it's not in a destructive, self-centered way. It's not in a narcissistic sense. It's, no, if I know that this is my purpose in life and this is what God has called me to do, and I'm not intentionally harming people, I'm not being a sociopath, then if you don't appreciate what I'm doing, I love you, but I wish you the best.
Right.
What was that process like? Because for someone who's listening, who's kind of like, I need to go through that process, help them navigate through the days ahead.
So in the book, there's actually, in the back of each chapter, there's something to do to get you to the next level.
Right.
But there's one specific area in the book where it goes day by day, things that you can do. So I believe one of them, the first day you look in the mirror and you tell yourself 5 things about you. A lot of times we don't look in the mirror and tell ourselves, you are beautiful.
Right.
You're fantastic. You're wonderful. You're smart. You're all of these different things. We don't look in the mirror and say those things.
Right.
And so every single day there's something for you to do. And then you get to the end of the 14th day and then you've been pouring into yourself for 14 days straight. And you're like, you know what? That's where that turn takes place. It's like, okay, I understand this now. I know I'm getting there. I know who I am now because I'm appreciating me.
Right.
And I'm appreciating who I am. You're learning who you are. So, and you're not looking for someone else to do it. That was one of the things that kind of kept me in that place before, where I was depending on other people's empty compliments.
That's so good, Ruthie.
And it was just depending on those compliments because I wasn't giving them to myself.
Right.
Of course, I would walk around and say, I look good, but was I really thinking to myself that I look good? I didn't take that time to pour into myself.
It's funny, as you were saying that, the thought that came to my mind, it's almost like you received empty compliments because you were giving yourself empty compliments.
Absolutely.
You know, it's, well, I look good. Okay, well, that's really superficial, but you weren't saying things like, no, I'm smart and I'm capable
Absolutely.
and I'm talented and, you know, I'm a virtuous. You weren't
Right.
speaking those things. So it was almost like when someone came along with the cotton candy, it was like, oh, yeah, I'm used to cotton candy. I'll
Yes.
take this. That's really good.
So it's just so important for us to really, really pour those compliments into ourselves, and that's actually in the Build Me Up chapter of the book.
Right.
You start building yourself up.
Right.
And you're no longer looking for someone else to build you up, because whatever purpose God has for you is already in you. And a lot of people don't know that it's already there. He gave you everything you need when he formed you in the belly.
That's so
everything
good.
you need.
And what came to my mind is, if we really invested the time in building ourselves up and in as women, you know, and I'm using the universal we. If we invest the time in building ourselves up and not feeding ourselves cotton candy or things that are superfluous or superficial, but we really start to feed ourselves meat, then it makes us better life partners. So that
Absolutely.
when, you know, whether it's you're looking to be, it's a business partner or you're looking for marriage.
Absolutely.
It makes you a better partner, because now your spouse doesn't have to spend 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year telling you every second of the day,
Yes.
you're beautiful and you're awesome and I love you so much and you're nothing, I'm nothing without you, and you're,
Yes.
you know what I mean? And that's draining to always, it's great to build someone up and it's great to speak well and to,
Right.
but when you're always in a place of pouring into an empty bucket, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I like that you say that you're pouring into an empty bucket,
Yeah.
because you haven't put anything in.
Right.
You have not. You haven't put anything in here, and you're waiting for someone else to put it in for you.
And the thought that came to my mind, Ruthie, is if you start that now, and so we're speaking to our singles, you know, we married, you have your Saturday, it's the second Saturday, the Nears will help you out, reach out to them. You know, I'm talking to the single women, that it's, you know, if you take the time to fill that void inside of you and to build your own self up with things that are not superficial and superfluous, get past I'm pretty.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yes, you're pretty. Acknowledge it, accept it. Okay. But get to the meat and get to substance.
Right.
You'll be able to, I'm thinking, you'll be able to better recognize the red flags.
Exactly.
And to be like, wait a minute, that's rude. Yeah,
Yes.
I don't, you know, and without having to, because I'm a silent dismisser. You know, I won't necessarily go off, but I'll just, okay, that's not where that portal is closed,
Right.
but we can be acquaintances.
Right.
We're done with that.
Yes.
Because disrespect is not acceptable and disrespect is not okay.
Right.
So if I'm not going to speak to you disrespectfully, why would I tolerate you speaking to me disrespectfully? Right. If I'm not going to treat you disrespectfully, why would I tolerate being treated disrespectfully? But you said something earlier, Ruthie, that I think a lot of women fall into, and that is, people say I'm demanding. And when you become a woman who is secure in who you are,
Right.
not cocky, not arrogant, not narcissistic, not I think I'm all that and 20
Right.
bag of chips,
Right.
but when you really become secure in who you are, this is who I am, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. And if you leave it, it's okay. I'm not hating on you.
That's fine. Yes.
I'll wave at you from across the street and I will
Yes.
smile sincerely.
Yes.
You kind of become a threat a little bit. Because for those who haven't arrived in that place of acceptance for themselves yet.
Right.
You almost seem like too much.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to our women, talk them through this place of learning to stand even when others think you're too much.
Learning to stand when others think you're too much. You kind of have to let them be them.
Right.
And you're too much because they're not what you're bringing to the table.
Right.
And I find that a lot. And what I personally do, a lot of people say I'm standoffish, but it's not that I'm standoffish, but I know who I am. And if you show me a red flag, I now pay attention to the red flag.
Right.
You show me who you are, I'm going to pay attention to who you are. So, we just, as women, we have to do that. It's just so critical in every relationship. And that's friendships. That's
Exactly.
That's marriage. Mm-hmm. That's dating relationships. We have to just be mindful of those things. You stand your ground. Know who you are. You are, I put in my book that you have the power to write your own destiny. Mm-hmm. And I firmly believe that you have that power because, you just can't give up that power to people. Mm-hmm. Know who you are. Stand firm. Even if people think you're too much, it's because they're not enough. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to put it like that. So, it doesn't come across as being arrogant or cocky or anything like that, but it's because there's something in you that they wish that they could do. I have a lot of people say, gosh, I wish I could be so confident and so just do what I want. And I'm just kind of like, well, it's not that I do what I want, but I know who I am. So I have that confidence.
I think it's a sense of being unapologetically you.
Yes. Yeah. And I do say that, but I say that and I hear that all the time. I listen to Lisa Nichols, and she says that unapologetically.
And
yes.
And I find, and we're going to say this and we're going to have to go. This has been a great interview and we are 2 minutes over time. So hang tight with us for just a minute. I find often that it's women who apologize the most for being who they are.
Yes.
Our male counterparts, men don't spend a lot of time apologizing. This is who I am. This is what I do. Deal with it.
And they move on.
Right. And I think sometimes we fall into the category of being a people pleaser because we're nurturers by nature. Yes. And so sometimes I think that goes down a road that it doesn't need to go down. And we start to adjust a little bit too much. And we jump through, through observation. I've seen women jump through hoops to get love.
But I don't think it's adjusting. I think it's changing who we are. When you adjust,
right,
you kind of,
that's
you're
a good
still
distinction.
Who you are,
right.
But we're changing to be something that we're not.
That's good. That's an excellent distinction. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I've seen women change to try to get something only to lose themselves in the process and still not get the very thing they changed for.
Exactly.
And so, be really in business. And this advice, and again, we trust, as the disclaimer states, that you're all adults and you'll make educated choices. These are our opinions. But take a moment and step back. It doesn't always have to apply to romantic relationships.
Right.
It's platonic. It's business.
Yes.
If you go into the world always changing who you are for someone else, you're going to lose you at some point and almost kind of disintegrate and dissolve.
Yes, and you're still part of that 33, and you're it's actually the OBL. So you're just constantly on the OBO. OBO. And
this is what I want, but I'll settle for this.
Exactly.
This is what I really want, but I'll settle. And that's not just in relationships. That's in everything.
That's in everything.
What I really want is this. But all right, I guess
stick to
I'll
what I
settle for.
really want.
Yeah.
Because God will give you the desires of your heart. He will.
That's right.
So stick to what you want.
All right, Ruthie. So if you are, and I know we've covered in getting to know Ruthie, we found out that she is an entrepreneur herself and that she coaches entrepreneurs. So reach out to her on Facebook. You can find her at Ruthie Q. That is her Facebook page. It is RUTHIE, Q as in Queen, just the letter Q. You can find her there. If you would like to purchase the book, The Journey, how can they do that?
They can go to my website, which is www.ruthieq.com. So www.ruthie, the letter Q.com.
Excellent. All right, we have come to the end of the show. And as always, if you are here in the San Diego area and you are in need of a church home and you kind of find yourself in this place where you're making cycles and you're going through and you're making the same choices over and over again, and you're kind of like, you know what, God, I'm done. I want you to lead. We invite you to come on out to Perfecting Grace. We are located at 3142 East Plaza Boulevard in National City, California, 91950. You can find us on the web at www.perfectinggrace.net. That is the church where I attend and Antonia, my program manager, attends. So we invite you to come on out. Our services begin at 9 a.m. You'll get some spiritual food for your soul. And until then, if you are out of the state or have your own home church, we thank you for tuning in with us, and we invite you to tune in next week for another installment of the Simone Edwards Show. Go on out and enjoy the rest of this Saturday. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.